beating Vegas 89-73 to take game one.
They said it couldn't happen. They said the Indiana Fever didn't belong on the same court as the defending champions. Analysts rolled their eyes, odds makers laughed, and even the Aces themselves seemed to expect this series to be a quick and painless sweep.
Indiana Fever had no business advancing to the semifinals for the first time in a decade without Caitlin Clark, without Sophie Cunningham, without Sid Colson, without Aaron McDonald.
But on the very night, Aaliyah Wilson was crowned MVP in front of a roaring Vegas crowd. The Indiana Fever walked into enemy territory, stunned the league, and stole Game 1 of the semifinals. This wasn't just a win. It was a statement. It was defiance. It was a team full of injured stars and doubted veterans showing the world that heart, grit, and belief still matter in basketball. And when the buzzer sounded, Sophie Cunningham may not have been on the floor, but she was right there in the middle of the fire, letting the whole team know exactly what this upset meant.
The hospital squad is on the bench, and yet the Indiana Fever are into the semifinals of the WNBA.
Think about how wild this story is. Indiana came into this series missing 6 key players. Caitlin Clark, the rookie phenom who had carried so much of the spotlight, was sidelined. Sophie Cunningham, the team's emotional spark plug, couldn't go. Sydney Colson, Ari McDonald, Chloe Bailly, and Damaris Dantas were all out too. That's not just a few injuries, that's practically an entire roster gone before the ball even tipped. By every logical measure, Indiana had no business being here. The narrative around them wasn't can they win, it was can they survive without being humiliated? But instead of bowing to the odds, they used it as fuel. Every snub, every dismissal, every analyst who laughed at them became another reason to fight harder.
Caitlin Clark wore the black Air Force Ones again, lifted in the air like a beacon of hope.
Respect everyone, fear no one. That's big time. That's big time.
Las Vegas had all the pressure and none of the doubts. They were the back-to-back champions. They were honoring the league's best player before tip-off. Their crowd was already thinking about the finals. It was supposed to be a coronation. Aaliyah Wilson was presented her MVP trophy under the bright lights, her name echoing through the arena, championship banners swaying above her head. All eyes were on her, and the assumption was clear. This was going to be her night. But sports have a way of flipping the script when you least expect it. The same stage built for Wilson's glory became the same floor where Indiana ripped the spotlight away, and the one who snatched that spotlight more than anyone else was Kelsey Mitchell. For years, Mitchell has been one of the league's most underrated scorers. She's always been consistent, always been respected, but never really given the shine that comes with being considered among the elite. On this night, with her team counted out and her season supposedly over, she gave a performance so unstoppable it's already gone down in the history books. 34 points, 12 makes on 23 shots, 4 deep threes, 6 for 6 at the line, and every single bucket felt heavier than the last. This wasn't just scoring. This was a takeover. Mitchell bent the game to her will and silenced the crowd with every jumper. She walked into an MVP celebration and turned it into her own masterpiece. Her post-game words said it all. Mitchell admitted she's kept a list of every time people wrote her off, every coach who didn't want her, every outlet that ignored her. Instead of quitting, she turned that pain into fire. On this stage, under the brightest lights she's ever had, she burned every doubt to ash. And in doing so, she set a record, the highest scoring debut performance in a WNBA semifinal. No Fever player had scored that many points in a playoff game in over a decade. No one expected her to be the story, but she made sure the league couldn't talk about anything else. Of course, one player doesn't beat the defending champions alone. If Mitchell was the fire, Aaliyah Boston was the steel. Her assignment? Guard the league's MVP, Aaliyah Wilson. That's a nightmare matchup for anyone. Wilson is dominant inside, stretches defenses outside, and has made a career out of breaking even the best defenders. But Boston didn't blink. From the first possession, she set the tone. No easy catches, no free lanes, no uncontested looks. She forced Wilson to fight for everything. Yes, Wilson still put up her numbers, 16 points, 13 rebounds. But they came through sheer grind, not dominance. Instead of dictating the game, she was dragged into a battle she didn't want. And that battle tilted everything in Indiana's favor. Boston's discipline was remarkable. She didn't fall for Wilson's fakes. She bodied her without fouling. She used her footwork to push Wilson off her spots and forced her into late shot clock situations. It wasn't about erasing Wilson, that's nearly impossible. It was about disrupting her rhythm just enough to throw the entire Aces offense off balance. And that's exactly what happened. For once, the champions weren't dictating the paint. Indiana was, and it wasn't just Boston. Natasha Howard brought muscle and timing, recording another double-double that kept the Fever steady. Brianna Turner walled up drivers and altered shots, making the lane a battlefield instead of a free runway. Together, Indiana flipped the script, outscoring Vegas in the paint 50-38. Think about that. The supposed weakness of this team turned into their strength. On the perimeter, Lexie Hull was relentless. She shadowed Jackie Young, one of the league's toughest covers, and refused to let her breathe. Every cut was contested. Every screen was fought through. Young looked muted, and that defensive effort spread to everyone else. Hull also delivered on the other end, draining clutch threes when Indiana needed them most. Odyssey Sims, meanwhile, was the fearless engine. Every possession, she pushed the pace, driving hard into defenders, drawing fouls, and forcing the Aces to scramble. Her energy kept Vegas on its heels and gave the Fever a rhythm they desperately needed. This wasn't one player winning the game. It was a team finding its heartbeat in the middle of chaos. And then there was Sophie Cunningham. She wasn't on the court, but if you think she wasn't a part of this win, you're mistaken. Sophie has built her reputation on intensity, on grit, on never backing down from anyone, even sidelined. She was one of the loudest voices in the building, urging her teammates forward, challenging them to keep pushing, and celebrating every moment of defiance. After the game, players mentioned how Sophie's energy from the bench kept them sharp. Fans watching noticed it too. Her reactions, her fire, her presence was impossible to ignore. If anyone embodied the spirit of this upset, it was Sophie Cunningham. You could practically feel how much she wanted to be out there, and her teammates carried that energy for her. Caitlin Clark, also sidelined, gave her respect in her own way. She tweeted just 2 words, "Kelsey, unreal." That was enough. A rookie phenom giving props to the veteran who carried them proved the unity inside this team. It's not about spotlight, not about ego. It's about survival, about winning, about lifting each other up. Clark didn't need to be dramatic. Her message was simple and powerful, just like the Fever's performance. Even Becky Hammon, the Aces head coach, had to admit what everyone could see. They had no answer for Kelsey Mitchell. That's a rare concession from one of the toughest coaches in the league. But it underscored the truth. This wasn't luck. This wasn't a fluke shooting night. Indiana beat the champs at their own game. They were faster, tougher, more urgent. They dictated pace, owned the paint, and frustrated every Vegas star. They came in as the team lucky just to be standing, and left as the team standing taller than anyone else. But here's the thing. Upsets are one night. Championships are series. One game doesn't win you the crown. History says nearly 30% of teams that lose Game 1 in a best-of-5 still come back to win. The Aces know this. Their fans know this. Game 2 will be war. Wilson will not settle again. Jackie Young will look to explode. Becky Hammon will make adjustments. The defending champs will swing back, and they will swing hard. That's what makes the next step even more fascinating. Indiana isn't just the underdog anymore. They're the team with control. And being the hunter is very different from being the hunted. Can Mitchell find that same rhythm when the defense comes with traps and doubles? Can Boston frustrate Wilson for a second straight night? Or does the MVP break free? Can the Fever bench continue to deliver with so many key players out? These are the questions that will define not just the next game, but Indiana's identity. Winning once was shocking. Winning again would be transformational. If they go home up 2-0, the entire league will be forced to stop dismissing them as a nice story and start recognizing them as real contenders. And for a franchise that hasn't seen a semifinal victory in nearly a decade, that would be the moment everything changes. Sophie Cunningham knows this better than anyone. She's lived the battles, taken the hard fouls, felt the disrespect. She knows what it means to be underestimated, and that's why her fire has been so contagious for this team. Even from the sidelines, she embodies the we over me culture the Fever live by. It doesn't matter who gets the credit. It doesn't matter who's on the floor. What matters is that they fight, they believe, and they rise together. That's the legacy Indiana is trying to build, and nights like this prove they're on their way. So here we are, one upset in the books, one locker room buzzing with belief, one franchise that's been doubted for years, suddenly reminding everyone why you never count out a team that refuses to quit. The question now is simple. Can they shock the world again? Everyone remembers the final score. Indiana 89, Las Vegas 73. But the numbers don't tell the full story. The real story is how a team written off as broken, a team limping into the playoffs with half a roster, turned into the toughest, loudest, and most fearless group on the floor. From the first whistle, it wasn't about talent on paper. It was about fight. And that's what made this upset one of the most jaw-dropping moments in WNBA playoff history. Picture the scene again. Vegas, loud, confident, buzzing with MVP chants. Wilson walking to midcourt, flashing her smile with that golden trophy in her hand. The crowd on its feet, convinced this was just the beginning of another championship run. You could almost feel the arrogance in the air. The Aces were ready for a celebration, not a war. And that's exactly when Indiana pounced. They didn't just sneak into the arena quietly. They stormed it with energy, with urgency, with the kind of determination that you can't measure on a stat sheet. That's why this win felt so much bigger than just basketball. This wasn't only about X's and O's. It was about pride, about dignity, about showing up when nobody else believes in you. That's why Sophie Cunningham's role loomed so large. Even in street clothes, she was the loudest presence on the bench. You could see it, standing up every possession, clapping, yelling, making sure her teammates felt her fire. If you know Sophie, you know she's never been afraid of the big moment. She's been booed, shoved, even targeted by opponents, but she never backs down. And when the Fever started to sense they could actually pull this off, her energy was like gasoline poured on a flame. Now let's talk about Kelsey Mitchell again, because her night deserves to be remembered in detail. 34 points isn't just scoring, it's domination. It's refusing to let your team fold under pressure. Mitchell scored in every possible way: pull-ups off the dribble, step-back threes, twisting layups through traffic, ice-cold free throws. And every time Vegas made a mini run, she shut it down with another dagger. That's what stars do. But what makes this even more powerful is that she's been overlooked for so long. Drafted back in 2018, she's poured her heart into this franchise while the wins never came. She could have left, could have chased a bigger stage. She didn't. She stayed. And finally, on this night, she was rewarded. Caitlin Clark's two-word tweet, "Kelsey Unreal," went viral. But it wasn't just a message for Mitchell. It was a message to the league. Pay attention. Clark might be the face of the Fever's future, but she knows who carried the franchise on her back before she got here. That kind of respect between teammates is rare. It shows the bond inside this locker room. It shows that even with injuries, egos, and outside noise, this team believes in each other. And that's what makes them dangerous. Now here's where things get even more interesting. Look at the parallels in sports history. Every fan remembers the impossible upsets. Villanova shocking Georgetown in '85, the Giants taking down the undefeated Patriots in the Super Bowl, even the miracle on ice when college kids beat the Soviet hockey machine. Those moments all had the same ingredients: underdogs, doubt, and sheer willpower. And in the WNBA, this game belongs right up there. Nobody outside Indiana thought the Fever could win, but the second they proved everyone wrong, they joined that lineage of underdogs who flipped the script. And let's not forget the defense. Aces fans might look at the box score and say, Wilson still had 16 and 13. What's the big deal? But the big deal is how hard every single one of those points was. Boston made her uncomfortable. Howard and Turner took turns banging with her inside. The help defense rotated at just the right time. Vegas is used to bullying teams inside, but this time, they were the ones frustrated. Every time Wilson spun baseline, there was a body waiting. Every time Jackie Young tried to drive, Lexie Hull cut her off. Every time Chelsea Gray thought she had an opening, it was swallowed up by quick hands. That frustration built over 4 quarters until it boiled over into sloppy possessions. Indiana didn't just defend, they suffocated. And how about Odyssey Sims? She's been in the league for years, known as a fearless guard who never shies from attacking the rim. This night, she played like she was 10 years younger. She pushed tempo, she broke down defenders, she got Vegas into foul trouble. Every time she touched the ball, you could see the Aces' defense panic for a split second, worried about what was coming next. That's the kind of pressure that doesn't always show up in stats, but it changes the game. It tilts the floor. And Sims tilted it all night long. Lexie Hull deserves even more credit too. People forget she's not a superstar name, but she's the kind of player every team needs in the playoffs. Tough, focused, unselfish. She took the hardest defensive assignment and made life miserable for Jackie Young. She spaced the floor with timely threes. She hustled for every loose ball, and she did it all without needing the spotlight. That's what makes Indiana so different from Vegas. The Fever didn't care who got the points or the credit. They cared about winning. That's we over me in action. And let's circle back to Sophie Cunningham, because if there's one player who personifies we over me, it's her. Sophie has built her career on toughness, but also on loyalty. She's the player who dives on the floor, who takes the charge, who barks at opponents, and then turns around to hype her teammates. Injured or not, she wasn't going to let this moment pass quietly. She was in her teammates' ears, reminding them not to let up, reminding them they could shock the world. And when the final buzzer sounded, nobody looked prouder than Sophie. She wasn't pouting about missing the game. She was celebrating as if she'd scored every point herself. That's the heartbeat every contender needs. Now, let's not pretend this series is over. Vegas has been here before. They've been knocked down and come back stronger. Wilson won't stay quiet. Jackie Young won't stay muted. Becky Hammon won't sit back and let her team fold. They will adjust. They will punch back. And they will make Game 2 a war. That's what makes this next game so crucial. For Indiana, it's a chance to flip the entire narrative of the WNBA playoffs. Win again, and suddenly they're not just a Cinderella story. They're a legitimate contender. Think about what that would mean. A franchise that's been mocked, ignored, and forgotten for almost a decade suddenly standing on the doorstep of the finals. Players who were dismissed as role players suddenly defining the playoffs. And a coach, Stephanie White, proving that belief and preparation can topple even the most decorated roster. That's bigger than one game. That's legacy. And for Sophie Cunningham, it would mean even more. She's fought her entire career to be taken seriously, to prove she belongs, to stand toe-to-toe with the best. Watching her team do this without her, you can bet it fueled her hunger even more. When she's healthy again, just imagine the fire she'll bring. Imagine her stepping back onto the court, knowing her teammates carried the torch and lit the league on fire in her absence. That's the kind of redemption arc you can't script. So where does this leave us? With a series suddenly wide open. With the Indiana Fever proving they're not just participants, they're disruptors. With Kelsey Mitchell carving her name into the record books. With Aaliyah Boston showing she can go toe-to-toe with the MVP. With Sophie Cunningham reminding everyone that leadership doesn't always require minutes on the floor. And with the entire WNBA world asking one question, can they do it again? Because here's the truth. One upset gets attention. Two upsets make believers. If the Fever walk out of Game 2 victorious, they won't just have stolen a night. They'll have stolen the entire storyline of the postseason. And for a team that's lived in the shadows for too long, that would be the sweetest revenge of all. So if you're fired up for the Fever, if you're proud of what this team just did, let the world know. Because history isn't just written by champions. Sometimes it's written by the teams bold enough to challenge them. And on this night, the Indiana Fever wrote a chapter nobody will forget.